Good evening, folks. Welcome to another session from the old wise asylum, and the sun is shining. What a jolly day. So I've got plenty of sun. I'm happy. All's good. Summer's arrived. So what can we say? Well. What do you reckon to the old explosion that they've just had over there? It looked a little bit nuclear to me. And I watched a guy who went through the trigonometry of it all, taking... so he basically found the buildings from which one particular video were taken from, showing another building for perspective, and then this huge mushroom. And from his measurements, the actual size of the mushroom that we saw is bigger than some of the old nuclear tests that they obviously correlated data for. So, interesting. It was an interesting thing, and an image. This is what they're after, isn't it? They need that image to frighten everybody to death. Sort of like capitalise on the fear and damage and trauma that everybody experienced over the last 3 years. What would be greater than that kind of an image, on a bigger one than that, perhaps one that you'd expect to see as a nuclear, and not just as we are suggesting it could have been. But by all accounts, the size of the plume on trigonometry, as he took it from the map, the places where it was way bigger than some of the nuclear weapons that they've already tested. So, who knows? Who knows? It's... I think what he was trying to get across is that even though there were a lot of ammo in there, it probably wouldn't have made such a mushroom cloud specifically. We're not talking about a blast kind of thing, but it wouldn't have given a mushroom cloud off. So it's worth keeping in mind. You know, have they upped the game? Or are they starting to throw nukes around? And if so, who gives a shit anyway? It's a good firework displaying it. I mean, even though we've all paid for it, well, you know, anyway, that's that. So what have I got tonight? Interesting. So we're going to have another look at the Vatican. What is it today? Because, you know, I've spoken before, or last week especially, where sort of just gave you an insight into some of the stuff that we're finding. That the Vatican is actually the one that sequesters the original title, and it's, we believe, carried through the maiden name. Yeah, because of course, let's look at it in another way. It's an eternal thing, it's secret, it's hidden. We know the Vatican gives the kingdoms its commission. So obviously the Vatican then has got power above both king, which is common law, and also equity. Admiralty, maritime. Way above all this stuff. So we also know that you take on the father's surname and you become more classed as a dead trust, a dead entity. Look at the Mary and Jesus story. Where's Dad? Yeah. Now, just scouting through some stuff as I have been of late, we really have to start to recognise that this picture we have of what is Rome, that's not just in the historical context that they've chosen to put out and promote, but more importantly, the theology side of it, the symbolism in relation to Mary, Jesus, Magdalene, and the disciples, isn't that all a gig? This present Catholic, or certainly not Catholic, is it? This Jesuit church, you could say, was pretty much being formed from the time the Jesuits were forced back in to the church in 1814. So then I looked at, well, let me just remind myself again as to what it were that they were actually pulled out for. And then they were doing a lot of strange things in a lot of strange countries, not just South America, Portugal, France. There's ties specifically to this being responsible for the French Revolution, the one that benefited from it, more in sync with what's actually building through the 1800s, and actually before it, was what we know as communism. And of course, we've explored the Prussian side of this, and because what I see more than anything is that although from Charlemagne's day, the agreement with the church that one would protect the other would protect the other eternally, blah 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 blah, it would appear that through this move of the Prussians, which is of course Templar origin, is the Roman Empire, and not only that, is then what has took over Rome, the church. So we're told to see that this idea that of theology, etc., is what it was from the get-go. I'm not so sure that that's the case. I've always felt that what we see, what we know, which is why we attack it and blame it, isn't actually what it is that we're angry about. We're angry about this new system. This new system that's moved us off our parish titles, etc., moved us into this commerce title, SESQV. And I know you look at history, but again, remember all this history that we have, and we can't trust anything before the 1600s, because of course that's when they started to pull in records. But then again, you're still only given half the tale, because you're given the woes and willies of certain personalities like John Dee, Queen Elizabeth, Cecils, etc., Bucket, all these people, Charles I, James VI. We've got all these sorts of stories about these particular people, but you don't necessarily you're not looking at the secret society affiliations of these personalities, so you're not seeing the actual, the inner circle sort of power grid. We're pushed onto this outer side. So you don't get to see the nuts and bolts of it. It's not Freemasons have been around a long time. I said last week or a week before, it's difficult to actually now come to terms and fully understand what's on top. York Rite, Scottish Rite. Clearly the Scottish Rite has been the one that they've moved across the world. You've got the French Rothschilds creating the Grand Orient, which of course connected it all to the East Indies, and especially all the trade with China, opium and everything else that went with it. So that's India as well. The Indian Raj, that were all about putting opium and then moving it from India into China. You've got P&O ferries, which have specifically built the ships in order that they could move massive quantities of opium in the bottom side of the hulls. You've got the Russell family, the Keswicks. These were major players in the movement of opium in those days of the East India, now called the British Empire, but it's the same thing. And it's odd, isn't it? Because each nation that suffered the British Empire hates it with a vengeance, without realising that then when they've been asked to move and emigrate to other nations, that they're actually able to do that because it is actually the British Empire that's done that for them, not the actual nations that they've been pushed into. Albeit that's the belief. there's that old saying, isn't there? You'll be whatever you fight, you'll become. If you don't understand things as you move forward to the point that you realise, sort of, you've got to fight these things, and it's not actually fighting in a particular way. Otherwise, you will become it. The very thing it is that you despise, you will become it because you'll use its tactics. And that's just it's the way it is. It's as old as time. It's known. That's how it works. And you can see that in everything. You can see that that's what this priesthood actually manipulates. It manipulates that hidden side of all this nonsense that people have while they're pushing the maps on a territory that's out to sink. They're doing it because the map's keeping them going because they're not seeing the territory correctly. They're editing it to their version or their map that they hold dear, that they've had programmed in, that they've experienced, etc., etc. Or basically made up of your reactions to the stimuli you've had from birth. There's another old saying, and that is, they give you a body, you're going to have experiences, you're going to have pain, you're going to have hurt, you're going to have all sorts of things going on. The trick is to suss that when you get to an age where you're pretty much able to take care of your own self, that it's then how you heal those responses to the stimuli that you've experienced, rather than running around spending all your time bringing judgment to people you perceive as actually doing damage, which in a lot of cases that has been the case. People do damage to other people all the time. It's human nature, it's the way it is. But if you take that perspective that you can't change what's been, you can only come to try and understand it, so to forgive it and let it go. And that'd be dealing with your experiences on a personal level and coming to your own understanding of how you see it, how you heal it, so that you can move forward, and that whatever it is that it was is past, and you don't want to be dragging it into your future. You can only do that if you come at peace with it. So there's all these ideas that this is what it's really about, but we're all pulled off onto expressing our maps over a territory that we don't really understand, but we're seeing it in the way we see it, or by our own viz, our own personal viz. Our map is how we see the world. So it's a breaking down of that false map and putting it in sync with the territory, that you start to really appreciate the reality of things, as opposed to the angst, the cry, oh poor me, this blah blah blah. It's, like I've been talking to people this week, and it just, obviously I'm thinking in these terms, and you listen to people and you can have a conversation with them, then all of a sudden you'll start, they'll project on into the mix the sort of infantile angst. They're blaming this, they're blaming that for their own woes, and they can't do this and they can't do that. I have to take this medication, I have to do that because I did that, and it's like, wow, that is the map, and you're getting a glimpse into the bubble that they're stuck in. They've an answer for everything that's put them where they are and the reason why they are as they are, and they're still carrying hatred and grudges from people they deemed have hurt them in the past. And you can just, I've been so aware of that this week, and that's what's manipulated. It's that false side of things in our own self that's manipulatable. So trauma is a big part of that. If they can fix you in trauma so that you can't heal from that trauma, they've got you by one method or another. It's what you've got, that angst. Where's your anger? There's a path for every anger, angst going, because they cater for it, and it's that kind of control we have to start to move out of in our own self. So it's a cleansing in it. It makes sense without it being complex. Whereas you're studying all these Eastern philosophies, it's so complex. You have to learn so much data, new language, new words, concepts for these words, what they mean. It's really difficult to make a lot of sense of it unless you stick at it, and we're talking years, But it's basically all just hiding or giving you reason to stay in your angst because you're not getting to the core of the issue and seeing it for what it is, the simplicity of it. And it is all rather simple. That when you can undo that hurt, that pain, that focus on things that you shouldn't really focus to because they're not serving you. They're not serving you in the present, and they're not going to serve you in the future. So the priesthood as a whole at the top end, they understand this, they understand how we operate, they understand how we work, they're creating paradigms for these maps, they're educating you, or programming you, whichever way you want to see it. You know, they're setting your life ahead from the get-go. You know, you'll think you'll never amount to nothing, buff, off you go. Most people believe it, you know, especially if at home they're not getting that secure from the mum and dad, that actually they're fantastic and amazing, and you have to push yourself to your limit. That way then, as long as you're on top and keeping not control, but you're the influence in your offspring's minds, the world, it doesn't matter what the schools are going to do or say. It doesn't matter what TV is saying and going to do. You've put in that they need in order they can. It's a point of reference that they can look at what's happening, and you've given them that. No, this is what it's all about. And so, if you're just going with the flow, you're going with the education, you're moving in the direction they've deemed you're capable of because of your exam results, etc., etc., then you are fully controlled without a shadow of a doubt. And they're just keeping you busy. You've not got time then to focus yourself, work these things out, and come back to some kind of balance, so that then when you're looking out there in the big wide world, you're actually seeing it at a deeper level. You're seeing it at a deeper level because you're seeing the real play. And the further you go with that into yourself and understanding yourself, the more you can see you or parts of you playing out all over the shop, with individuals more ingrained on that particular habit, that path, whatever you want to call it. But you can see always that there's a little bit of everybody in us all. And, you know, it's just by our own nature that we're actually doing more in tune with that than we are in tune with that. But you can use an affinity with all kinds of behaviours that you see out there in the world, because there's a little tiny bit of it in everybody. So we're all playing with the same sort of substance, but ultimately it's how we're dealing with that and reacting to it and the stimuli out there that's going to determine who we are and how we express ourselves, and what kind of people then we're going to be attracted to, and thus going to be attracted to us. So it is all in us in that sense. So we said last week this. We are looking at what we're finding, and it really does look like the Vatican have created the first trust, and it's probably right back to the concept, the conception, not the fertilization as we would call it in scientifically. They have another word for it, and it's called conception. So it's a con, and it's a sept. Yeah. So there's something going on there now. Whether in the old school it were there to look after you and make sure you had the land that they had under the wing available to you, etc., and you were building communities under that sort of a spiritual massage, which is now commerce. It's all about commerce. Now, it is in sync with the Jesuit time, because, of course, you've got all the central banks being put together. I think the first one was Venice, and that was in the Middle Ages, but when you started to get into Europe, you have to remember, I think the Dutch was the first. It was the Dutch central bank that came in play first, which is why they were headquartered in Holland, and then shifted it over here when they did the same in the Civil War. So it's a commercial entity now. Why has the Vatican pulled all the assets into the Vatican Bank? Why is it pretty clear the Vatican, or specifically the Jesuit Pope, is ever tying himself further and further to China? Which he is. It's a fact. It's an absolute. It's there to be seen if you look. You've got the priesthood in the mix, the name stealers, which I have mentioned a couple of times. But so from both two sources, this idea of the name stealers isn't just coming from the Western side. There are copious writings of it from the Chinese side, and there's also writings from it from Europe about this particular area, which is, you could say, the Ukraine into Poland. It were a much bigger area than were told Khazaria was, much bigger. And they were called and known as the name stealers. Because of course the ancient Chinese idea is they're always trying to move in the westward. They were always coming up with problems with the Mongols. And the yellow race got over here through Genghis, as it were. But they had in the writings that there were a point at which they always warned you not to go beyond, because there were these tribes that were very good at name stealing. So I think that's where we're getting this, all these ancient mighty names that they tie to whatever history it is they want to tie it to, and they're claiming to be ancestors. Well, not ancestors, the progeny of that, which is why it's all focused into this one particular group. We also know, we've discussed in a previous live stream last year, I think, where so many of the Jews from the Middle East, or Hebrews as I call them, have been taught for many generations that they're actually Khazarian, when in fact they're not. So there's a major thing going on in that sense against the Hebrews and the House of Judah. So it's not just an attack on one group. This bunch, through whatever methods, through Shabbatai Zevi into Islam, through Jacob Frank into Catholicism, but also you've got the Jesuits. You can see that this sect is about subversion. It cannot face... So any group or culture that can only operate on subversion has to start to accept that its theology is operating in accordance with this very thing that none of us can see today that we come for. It's not good. It's a slave system. And on top of that, they've made it pretty clear that they want to get rid of a lot of folk. So we have to take note of what's actually going on. So I want us to have a look. Let me just think here now. So I need to... Now this time I have to make sure I transition. So otherwise, so I've transitioned. It should work, he says, with bated breath. Now that's not the one I want for now, but it is the core of this, or the beginnings and why I'm doing this. I'm not getting it. Here we go. So, right. Now this is the Jesuits. This is an old image in China pushing science on the Chinese dynasties. So this has gone back a long time. I've said before that Breakspear, Henry Breakspear specifically as he was, the Breakspears ran the British Isles for the Vatican, but they were shifted over into China once they got the Stanleys in the game. But that's not actually the one I'm looking for. I'm looking for... Now, I need to get this in better order, because I'm not doing this very well. I don't think I've put it up. Well, this is it. It's actually the cover of this video. Now, let's have a look at that. That is an image in the Vatican. Now, my guess is this was put together at the time when the Jesuits had moved into China. Now, look at the Sacred Heart in this image. It's all that you'd expect from Catholicism. It's got the keys. Yeah, it's got the beehive, pineal. But look what's in the heart. It's a dragon. Now, you don't see that on much Roman historical context, I don't think. But the dragon race is the Chinese race. And from a Japanese princess did come the knowledge that the back in the day, well, this is probably Bolshevik times, this is probably even 1850s, been probably before that. The Chinese emperors were promised that the whole game was going to be pulled back into the Chinese race because they were the original dragon lines, apparently. So I've known about that for quite a long time. So it does all work in sync with this kind of nonsense. But this is something interesting that people are not aware of. Because this is important if you want to get an idea of the Chinese mindset. It says the attraction for the communists lies in the hierarchical nature of Catholicism. So the communists have always sought to control Catholicism because, like it's very hierarchical and has one leader. Yeah? So it's a mimic, isn't it? Yeah? But up until Vatican II, Catholicism in and of itself was the thing that stopped communism from flooding across the West. But it says now none of this is to say that the CCP government is wrong to be concerned. After all, Protestantism, powered by the Taiping Rebellion, which lasted from December 1850 until August 1871, that's 21 years, and resulted in somewhere between 20 to 30 million deaths and the effective destruction of imperial China. It would be no surprise if the CCP regime in Beijing is thinking back to the fate of the Qing dynasty 1644 to 1912 as it attempts to control runaway Protestantism in Gansu, Fujian and Liaoning, the centre of the Taiping Rebellion. So, how many people you were over there that once the Jesuits had got in, then we had this Protestant move went in and created a civil war that in the first instance between 20 to 30 million, but there's estimates also to say that it were probably 70 million. 70 million Chinese people died in this Protestant-powered Taiping Rebellion. Interesting. It says the Taiping Rebellion was a massive civil war waged in China from 1850 to 1864, commanded by the apocalyptic cult leader Hong Zi-quan, who claimed to be the brother of Jesus Christ. The goals of the Taipings were religious, nationalist and political in nature. They sought the conversion of the Chinese people to the Taiping syncretic version of Christianity, with the goal of overthrowing the ruling Manchu dynasty and the transformation of the state. Taiping sought to upend the moral and social order of China by establishing a utopian state based in Tianjin, now Nanjing, where they gained control of a significant part of southern China. While the Taipings were ultimately crushed, the conflict involved every province of China proper except Gansu and left the Qing dynasty devastated. It ranked as one of the bloodiest wars in human history, the bloodiest civil war and the largest conflict of the 19th century. Estimates of the war dead range from 20 to 30 million, with a recent Chinese study estimating up to 70 million dead. Okay, and that image comes from the public domain, The Siege of Nanjing by Imperial Troops. This religious problem may provide an insight into the reasons for the communist regime's willingness to finally negotiate an agreement with the Vatican. But then, of course, we're talking about the Jesuit Vatican. Yeah. The attraction for the communists lies in the hierarchical nature of Catholicism, in that, like China, the church is ruled by a single man, Pope Francis, who happily is a Jesuit. The party understands that what Pope Francis decrees carries a weight of authority within the Catholic Church that no Protestant leader will ever be able to emulate. Thus, the top-down hierarchical Vatican is far more in line with the CCP regime's thinking and practices. This may appear irrelevant, but it has to be said that the Imperial Chinese governments found dealing with the Society of Jesus far easier than dealing with the Protestants. Now then, is that interesting? So let's look at the mindset of the Chinese. That's what they see when they look out at the West. Their choice was Jesuit and Protestantism. And of course, Protestantism today is tied into Zionism, it's tied into Rothschild. Yeah, Cecil wrote all the imperial nonsense that comes from the British East India. Now, of course, we have to remember that above the British East India is a committee of 300. So here's a couple of black popes, because this is where it's said the power resides. The black pope who shadows the real pope. Now, the guy on the right, he had to resign, it is said, because he was caught in a speech being recorded in a private speech, and apparently American intelligence have this recording, that he actually stated that he was Satan's representative on earth. So he got kicked off, and the guy on the left took over. Now, I did say a few weeks ago that I watched a video, it's 10 years ago maybe, where two people had gone. It was when this guy was put in. I think he was put in 2016, if I remember this guy. So this guy made a cock up in 2016, replaced by this guy. So obviously, if this guy's saying Satan's represented on earth, the next guy has to be something completely opposite to that. And they put this guy in, which makes sense, because in this video, these two, a young couple, a guy and a girl, have gone in there armed with the Jesuit oath. And first they had to listen to the guy on the left speak. And they couldn't believe what they were hearing. This guy was so spiritual that they come out there, they were absolutely enamoured by Adolfo here. And that's Peter von Hans Korvenbach, the bad one. And they handed him on the left, they handed him the oath, and he was absolutely shocked like he'd never seen it before in his life. So there's some teeth to that story. Yeah? So then even within the Jesuits itself, you're going to have the inner circle who are going to be prepared to spout off that the Satan's represented on earth. But in fact, a lot of the Jesuits are actually good people. And of course, anybody who's been educated at a Jesuit college, not everybody, I don't know, I can't speak for you, but you're going to say that, Jesuits, you're educated by them, they're not all bad. And I would take that on board. I think that's going to be quite correct. Because that's the way it has to be for this. The evil side is hidden in the background. So if we just have a quick look at these two. Peter Hans Korvenbach, this is the guy that cocked up, or actually gave us what we needed to hear, was a Dutch Jesuit priest and professor who was the 29th Superior General of the Society of Jesus, the largest male Catholic religious order. And he was born 30 September 98 in Druten, Netherlands, died 26 November 2016, age 88. So did he die? Yeah? Well, if that's true, that he were forced off, then obviously they didn't want you to think he were dead. The representative of Satan on this dead, and they said in Beirut, Lebanon, we know how they work, that's not necessarily the fact. He's just disappeared somewhere, probably Antarctica or Paraguay, where they like to send a lot of people as well. Buried at College Notre Dame in Beirut, education, Canisius College, Nijmegen, University of St. Joseph, denomination Catholic, well, no. He was Jesuit, an occupation Jesuit professor, and he was a linguist. And he was installed as the Black Pope on the 13th September 1983. So that's that one, that's the dark one. And then you have the one that they put in. Adolfo Nicolas. Adolfo is a Spanish Jesuit priest of Catholic Church. He was 30th Superior General of the Society of Jesus from 2008 to 2016. Sorry, so 2008 when the other guy was kicked out. Yeah, 2008 when he was kicked out. He died in 2016. Fair dude. Before being elected Superior General, he worked primarily in Japan. So that's again a bit. He taught at Sophia University in Tokyo for 20 years and then edited educational institutions in Manila from 78 to 84 and in Tokyo from 91 to 93. He led the Jesuits in Japan from 93 to 96 and after 4 years of pastoral work in Tokyo, led the Jesuits in Asia from 2004 to 2008. So, if I'm right, that is the case, that he was actually a genuine guy, they would have needed him in then also to pull over the Chinese elites to perhaps move in on side with the Vatican and not the Protestant side of things, which is, to them would be East India Rothschild, even though we know the East India Company, it was a Roman imperial operation from the get-go. I don't know whether the Chinese are aware of that or not. So he ordained in 67, nationality Spanish, and from all intents and purposes, he was actually a really decent guy. So the Jesuits are something else, as we all know. But there's still a lot of mystery around them. There's probably a lot of nonsense about them as well. So this is the why we're doing this tonight. But what I'll do first, because I haven't said good evening to anybody, I'm going to give it a big good evening to you guys first, and we'll get back to that in a second. So who's on tonight? How's it going? Paul says good evening. Good evening to everyone. Good evening to you, Paul. Slipknot says alright, Sean, and alright everybody. Good evening, Slipknot. PY Music says evening all. Evening, Paul. June says, Paul says good evening and all in the chat. Good evening to you, June. Paul says evening to June. Solvimist. Oh, interesting. Hi from Oz. I got up early to watch. Well, excellent, and thank you very kindly. What time are you over there at this? Are you about 6 o'clock? 5:30, something like that. So welcome. Jace, my old China, how are you doing over there in the old Oz? Good morning to you. We have an emoji there with earphones on. Is he shouting? Treen says, oh, Treen on duty. Where have you been, madam? Where have you been? I just want everyone not too late for a change. So you've been catching it, have you? Okay, Treen, how you doing, Chuck? I know you have sent me emails before. I do apologise, Treen. I'm so engrossed in this this that we're doing at the moment. I just haven't had time really for anything. And I suppose some of these live streams are probably not up to scratch. But I'm so focused now to what I'm doing there. It's you know, when you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's amazing. It really is. So, Cos says, radiation. Ooh. Shawnee boy, radiation. AO, radiation, rocket, UFO, and the moon. So that's how Cos talks. The zippy in code on emojis. Tree says, well, it's one challenge after another. Wee dogs. My wee dog was attacked at a kiddies play park, and I was subjected to such abuse myself from this young woman. It's taken me a couple of weeks to come to terms. What's happened to old Stick Nut on, you jocks? Come on, Tree. I used to watch Rob Nesbitt. His wife was just as tough as he were. Well, he actually weren't tough, were he? His wife were. Well, we're sad to hear that, Tree, and I hope he's alright. I know it's probably cost you 14 million quid to take it vet. Your wee fog was screaming and I was powerless to help her as I was in such shock. I take it that's dog? Yeah, it's not pleasant, is it? Was it some kind of nasty one? I can accept there's people like her in abundance, a total psycho and narcissist. See, I'd have picked a brick up and smashed the dog's head to pieces. Yeah. Without a shadow of a doubt, if anything grabbed hold of my mutt. Well, I don't have a mutt now, but that's how I'd play it. Because I've had mutts in the past, and there has been times where I have had to kick the shit out of a dog that's got its fangs around mine. So I know exactly where you feel, and I thought any dog owner knows what it's like when that happens. It's not nice. You've got over plenty of trauma in your life, but as you get older, you're just not cut for the evil scum, justifying yourself by claiming your dog was effing hungry and wanted to eat my dog. But I think then I'd have probably stuck one on her as well, Tree. She's obviously not a nice person if that's what she's saying. Oh dear. So Paul says, sorry to hear that, Train. Yeah, sorry to hear that, Train. Oh, fancy transitions, very posh, says Cos. Have we got fancy transitions and I don't even know about it? Are you just saying I've done it right for a change? It's working. Are you being facetious? Untitled says, greetings to you, Sean, and both of us, and hello to all in the chat. From both of us, says the old Untitled. How are you doing, your China? Teresa, thank God, Paul, she's okay, but was picked up by her skull and thrown around and pinned down. Her head was swollen, and I thought her eye was about to pop out. Poor wee soul was screaming. Yeah, it's not a nice noise, is it? But she'll be right, kid. They're hard as nails, these dogs, honestly. Yeah, cattle prod. Just get hold of a big brick, a big piece of wood, and smash the living daylights out of the thing. And get a thin stick, stick it in its eyeball. It'll get off. Just stick it in its eyeball, it'll get off. But be ready for its owner to want to hit you. So always be ready for that bit as well. But yeah, I know what you're saying. There are some assholes about. Look at me being naughty. Of course, I'm only joking. So, where are we? PY, I train, record and report to RSPCA and police. Don't go near the RSPCA. They're terrible. They kill dogs. They're picking up your dogs and killing them. And they admitted that on an advert about 15 years ago. Their ad for the big ad is Better Fortune on Right Long. And I mean, I know most people didn't twig it up, but I sent in some stuff and it got pulled immediately. But they were basically bragging how they find homes for 1,000 dogs a year. How lovely are they? And then after they said, we find 3,000 dogs per year. And I thought, so obviously you're killing 2,000 frigging dogs. Yeah, it's a racket. So I won't bother with them buggers, I'll tell you that now. I'm not saying the volunteers that work for it might not be like that, but if they're picking your dog up and then chopping his head off, it's not good, is it? They're killing your dogs. They're not a benevolent company. They microchip them, and then if you want one off them, I believe there's rules, regulations, checking, blah, 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 like there's some kind of power. So RSPCA wants to die a death like RAC, that were caught not that many years ago, blagging batteries, telling everybody they can't need a new battery. They were making a fortune. So we go. If you're homeless, they will kill your dogs up and low. Yeah, not very nice, that is it? It's not a good precedent, is it? The good thing is, as they arm the police, and the police become stupid, at least you can all arm yourselves just by taking them off the police. It's pretty simple, really, maths. That's simple laws of war, you might say. It's stupid that the police are getting excited with guns like that, because I'll tell you now, it'll just get to a point where everybody gets a gun. And if people out there think you can't get guns out here in Blighty, believe you me, there are guns everywhere. Everywhere and anywhere. And if you are like-minded, you can pick a gun up within an hour. Anyway, you have to cut the chapter in, you're badding, but it doesn't matter. We do like doggies. Right, so that's good evening to you all. Back we go. So I have to, let me just get this right. I have to transition. It's working. We are on form tonight. Right. Get this. Okay, so this is UCC filing summary. Vatican City State. So it's a bit cut off there, my apologies. Now then, the debtor. Okay, debtor in the UCC is Vatican. United Nations, Depository Trust, Clearing Corporation, Code and Company, Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago. Okay. The creditor. This is the deals that these bums have done as Jesuits with China. Creditor. Long Yun Sun Son. Gary and Yun Long Family Trust. Yun Sun Long. Now I don't know about you, but I don't know anybody in Blighty or Europe that calls the children Yun Sun Sun Long. It doesn't happen, does it? Okay. Filing date for 19th of the 4th, 2023. Remembering the Vatican called in all the assets end of September last year. Filing type, amendment of parties. Filing locations, WA. View full text. Debtor. Idaho Department of Transportation, Vatican City State. You get Idaho Department of Transportation, Vatican City State. Creditor. Walker Rolf Joseph. Who's that? 1st of the 4th, 2023. Filing type, original. So the filing for the creditor to the Vatican is an amendment of the parties. Right? Are you seeing this? Bearing in mind, this no-hide system, set up by this Jesuit system, whatever it is about to nick your estates. Or get you to hand them over when they get their Antichrist going. Another Attorney General of the United States Department of Justice. Chester City Police Department. Court Administration, Delaware County Court of Common Pleas, Delaware County Office of the District Attorney is the debtor. And the creditor is Attorney General of the United States Department of Justice, Blinken Secretary of State, Anthony Chester, City Police Department, Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Office of the Attorney General. And this is 5th of the 2nd, 2023, and it's an amendment. Debtor, the Crown Corporation, Secretary of State, Wilkins Chapman LLP, the City of London, Her Majesty the Queen. The debtor, it's correct, okay? She is the debtor, or he is now, he's taken on this debt. The creditor, Anthony Paul Harris. Who the fuck's that? Okay, filed 5th of the 9th, 2022. That's September. 5th of September. Right, so what are we seeing here? Are we seeing here files that are in relation to what was called in all assets belonging to the Vatican by the end of September? 5th of September 2022, Crown Corporation, Secretary of State, Wilkins Chapman LLP. Yeah, I don't know. Who is Anthony Paul Harris? There's more. Attorney General of the United States Department of. It just goes on and on and on. Let's have a look. Debtor, District of Columbia, Moultrie Courthouse, JM 175, Robert J. Conti III, DBA Chief of Police. Office of Attorney General, District of Columbia Courts, Stephen Courts. Creditor, Shemeka Michelle Williams. Now I've looked into this. Shemeka Michelle Williams. It's part of a foundation, but I haven't looked into it enough to prove that it's the same Shemeka Michelle Williams, so I'm not going to include it in this gig. But I believe I've found her, and she's part of a huge operation. Filing date, 30th of the 3rd, 2023. Filing locate, yeah, and it's original filing time. Debtor, District of Columbia, Wells Fargo Bank National Association as trustee, the creditor. 30th of the 3rd, 2023, and it's an amendment. Asher Mona Lakeisha Williams Trust. Asher Mona Lakeisha Williams Non-Adverse, Non-Belligerent, Non-Combatant Private Foundation Court. Stephen Courts again, to do with District of Columbia. Attorney General side. District of Columbia Courts is the debtor, creditor, Asher Mona Lakeisha Williams Trust. Asher Mona Williams is the creditor. 30th, 3rd, 2023 amendment. Abbott Laboratories, AbbVie Incorporated, American Red Cross, Brown Forman Corporation, Bidco Limited, and that's the debtor. The creditor, Safety Nest Incorporated, whatever that is. 13th of the 3rd, 2023 original. District of Columbia as the debtor, creditor, Wells Fargo Bank NA, which is Wells Fargo Bank, again, trustee of District of Columbia, again. And it says this is, so it's a different filing, look. 4th of the 1st, 23, continuation. Located, file location DC. I think WI is Wilmington. I think that's Columbia, is it? I don't know. No, it can't be Columbia, can it? Because it would be DC. District of Columbia. So I'm not sure what CO is. Is DC different to Columbia itself? District of Columbia and Columbia? I don't know. Americans might have a better idea. So it's continuation. So Wells Fargo's bank. District of Columbia, Moultrie, Courthouse, Robert J. Conti, we've done that one. So this is another one. The 30th of the 3rd. So why is that in again? That's they look like it's a copy. No. What else have we got? United States of America. Location of incorporation, Washington DC. Incorporation date, 1st of the 1st, 1787. Primary SIC code, 9199. DUNS number, look at all them numbers. DUN. Fine. Registered agent, Robert Cohen, PhD. No agent listed, Paul B. Zaccardi. And it's got a web address, number of employees, 100 to 249. So this is the United States of America. So there's only 100 to 249 employed. Interesting, isn't it? Officers direct contacts, Joseph R. Biden, President. Kamala Harris, Vice President. Charles Gutman, Administration Manager. Arnitra Hall, Administrative Assistant. Amanda Kurtz, Administrative Assistant. This is the company. Look at this. They're not hiding nothing, are they? They're not hiding a thing. There you go. That's where it is, the White House. United States of America. And you've got all these other interesting bits of data. Now then, company investigator, Vatican City State, officers direct contact, Stephen C. Voidich, principal, Raphael Sachakov, owner of Vatican City State, Raphael Sachakov. That doesn't sound like that. This is a bit Russian, doesn't it? Or could it be Polish? I don't know. Michael Balheimer is a partner. Martino Rao is president. Christina Buxton is the director. Location of incorporation, Vatican City State. Holy See. Risk, flags. Global sanctions, no match. Fine numbers and DUNS, there you go. Address, Vatican City, Holy See, and there's a phone number. Vatican City, Relias, risk flags, no match, sanctions, no match. Address via Gregorio V2, 350 Roma, Italy. Vatican City Market, officers direct contacts, Leonardo La Rosa, liquidator. Sanctions, got no match there. I don't know what risk flags means actually. Oh right, yeah, so there is none. Ah, I see. I get it. DUNS SIC number and NAICS number. Address PZA Navona 25 Roma. What is going on here? And again, another, it's just a copy of that again. Embassy of the Vatican City. Christopher Pierre, manager. District, the ultimate parent. So Embassy of the Vatican City. Ultimate parent, District of Columbia. Immediate parent, District of Columbia. It's got a DUNS number, address 3339. Oh, interesting. Massachusetts Avenue, New NW, Washington DC. Folia Domus, Vatican City. Risk flags, no match. Embassy of the Vatican State. Address, United States. Location of incorporation, Vatican City State, Holy See. What? No then. UCC filings. The Crown Empire. Debtor country. Ooh. Now then, can you see why we're being fleeced? Debtor name, the Crown Empire, at debtor address, London. Debtor country, GB. See, Great Britain's no good. It's a debtor country. England, Scotland, and Wales if you want, but not GB. Debtor name, Honourable Society of the Inner Temple. Debtor address, Treasury Office, London, EC4Y7BS. Now then, you law people out there, you're getting information if you're savvy. Debtor name, Vatican City State. Debtor address, Vatican Realized Rome, Borgio, Angelico, Rome. Debtor country, Italy. This is how they're going to demolish Rome. You've put us on commerce, and then it's going to go, oh, no hides is the answer, isn't it? That's where they're going to play it. So they'll get you, you'll have to consent to let them put your estates in. So all is not lost, remember. The only thing that needs to happen is that the Europeans of all nationalities, not the immigration side, real, on the ground, born and bred, ancestral heritage, European peoples, Americans, Australians, New Zealand, you need to get a grip of this, because this is where it's at. It's all up to us to come off this shit system. Debtor name, Barclays Bank PLC. Debtor country. So Barclays Bank is tied to GB, is it? Oh, how interesting. Secured party or creditor information. Secured party name, Paul Anthony Harris. Secured party address, care of Highcliffe Farm, Blissworth. Secured party country, GB. Look how they're doing this. Chester City Police Department, Court Administration, Delaware County Court of Common Pleas. We've done that one. Crown Corporation, yeah. And then debtor's name, Insolvency Service. Debtor address, Ladywood House, 4546 Stevenson Street, Birmingham. Debtor country, GB. Debtor name, Reed K. Debtor address, Ladywood House, Stevenson Street, Birmingham. Again, GB. Debtor name, Bank of England. Debtor address, Threadneedle Street, London. Debtor country, GB. How can it be Bank of England and GB? Same. See, they tied it, see? Debtor name, the Crown Empire, London, GB. Debtor name, Honourable Society of the Inner Temple. Debtor address, Treasury Office, London. What was Elizabeth II? Member of the Inner Temple. Can you see how they've nicked it all? Charles is not the monarch that you think. He's the transition. Mother pulled it in. It all comes under Victoria. Ooh, what a woman that was. And not in a good way. Debtor name, Vatican City State. Vatican Realized Rome, Borgo, Angelico, Rome. Got that. Now then, Northampton. How many of you have got 1,000,000 letters from the Northampton building of computers that calls itself a court? Debtor name, Westworth Northampton Council. Debtor address, the Guildhall, Northampton. Debtor country, GB. Debtor name, Priti Patel, 2 Marsham Street, London. Debtor name, Matthew Dix, the Hall, Lurgate, Beverley North, Humberside, GB. Debtor name, Gary Taylor. Debtor address, the Hall, Lurgate, Beverley North, Humberside, GB. The Insolvency Service we've done. Linwood House, blah, 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 blah. That was Reed K. I've got Reed K somewhere. So Reed K again itself is a debtor thing. Oh, now look at this. Debtor name, the Crown Corporation. Debtor address, Buckingham Palace. But that's strange. GB. Debtor name, Secretary of State. Debtor address, 2 Marsham Street, London. GB. Wilkins Chapman LLP, the Hollowgate Beverley Northumberside, GB. Debtor name City of London, debtor address Guildhall, London, GB. Debtor name Her Majesty the Queen, debtor address Buckingham Palace, London. Debtor country GB. Debtor name West Northamptonshire Council, just done. Wow. Crown Corporation, debtor address Buckingham Palace. Secretary of State, debtor address 2 Morsham Street. Wilkins Chapman we've done. City of London we've done. Majesty the Queen we've done. Done that. These are all the done as numbers. District of Columbia. Location of incorporation, Washington DC. Incorporation date 1st of the 1st, 1800. Primary SIP code 911 and 1. Ooh. Interesting. Some more. Registered agent, again we still want it from Columbia, Zelen DRD, Washington DC. Dr. Lyra Johnson, CT Corporation System. Lorna John. Officers Directors Rhonda O'Neill, Val Blinkoff, Roland McAllister, Misha Atchison, Marjorie Barnes. Quick analysis flags. Bankruptcy debtor or creditor, yes. Other listings linked to business, yes. I think we're going to look at that. Rhonda O'Neill accountant, yeah, same again. That's yeah. Legal ultimate parent. So that's the legal ultimate parent. 1100 Street, 4th Street, Southwest Washington, DC. Company investigator, QSIP. Business name. So QSIP is a business name. Sanctions, no match. So there's no, it's looking good. In address United States. No one giving us the phone number. QSIP marketing, GM, that's Bertholdt Bracht Ali, Dresden, Germany. Achtung! QSIP Service Bureau, Water Street, New York. QSIP Service Bureau Officers Directors. Contact Cindy Weiss, Elizabeth Rogers, Michelle Grosso de Mario, Ralph Denson, Christopher Craig, he's the Vice President. Grosso de Maro. P.O. Box. Oh, clever P.O. Box. New York. Would it be serving that anything? UCC file secured party or creditor information. Secured party name E.E. on. A freeborn American citizen. Secured party address 18429 East Veterans Memorial. Dr. Satcom. Bonnie Lake. What? What's he? Secured party credit what? Secured party credit to what? Secured party name, the United States of America Department of the Treasury. Secured party address, 1500 Pennsylvania Avenue. Secured party name, United States of America Department of the Treasury. E.on. Is that E.on? What? Not E.on as we know it. This is E.on. 304 S. Jones Boulevard, suite number 1967, Las Vegas. The E.on Foundation, Jones Boulevard. Secure party address, Veterans Memorial. Secure party address here. So that's interesting. What's that then? Done that. QC, FD, MMX, Fidelity, Massachusetts Municipal Income Fund. Get your name. Jones Boulevard, Las Vegas. FSS, CSX, Fidelity, Select Software and its service portfolio debtor. Again, secure party name E.on, a freeborn American citizen. And that's interesting. Why? What's that all about? Why would you want to be a citizen? That's a third right to land. So that's... What's that? Secure party name, the United States of America Department of the Treasury. Yeah. There we go. And that... But back to the top. So I've just gone through that because there's some interesting data there and other people might be finding it useful. Look at this. This here. Vatican United Nations Depository Trust Clearing Corporation Code and Company Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago. Creditor Long Yun Sun Sun. What is going on? And this is only in April, 19th. Oh, 19th of April. That's Molech. That's the fire sacrifice to Molech. 19th of April. If memory serves me right. Good gracious me. What are we to make of that load of nonsense, folks? What do you think of that? Is that a bit worrying? Or what? Right. So what's the? I'm coloured by the sun. Yeah, I am. My hair goes blonde and my face goes brown. If I stay in too long, I go black. Well, not quite black, but you know what I mean. Interesting. Only see. What's that word? Not see. Eyes to see. There is a difference. Is there not? We've been looking into that. It's an interesting data. What else did we have? So, I mean, I pretty much put this together 2019 as Jesuit Pope Francis handed the Vatican to Bolshevik atheist communist China. So we now have a better idea as to why they've chosen the Jesuit side, which is also running the Protestant side, because they made claim at the Reformation time that they'd installed futurism in it and that they knew it would come back to the fold. I explained last week, Church of England services are 100% Vatican II. All of it. So everything is under. So they've used Protestantism as an agitator in order to take command and full control of everything. But remember, they were outlawed in 1773. But the suppression of them started in 1850 because of things they were getting up to. In different countries. It says here, and it is an interesting piece, what exactly do priests have to do to get kicked out of the church? Well, 200 years ago, the Jesuits, the order Pope Francis belongs to, found out. Nearly a year ago, Giorgio Bergoglio became the world's first Jesuit Pope. This was an unlikely choice. In the final stage of their vows, the order's priests promised never to strive for higher office within the Catholic Church or their communities. Their orders found in Ignatius Loyola was also opposed to Jesuits becoming bishops, and now a Jesuit is the Bishop of Rome. Pope Francis' election is ironic for another reason. The Jesuits were once kicked out of the church this year. They're not letting me look at it now. How naughty. So, they were letting me have... I were looking at this before, but now they're not playing. I hate it when they do that. They're such a bunch of shotters. Right, so that can get stuffed. We're not even playing. But that we're actually going through Portugal, France, all these different things. But let's have a look here. So this is why they were suppressed. From 1750 to 1773, then they were kicked out. Yeah. Because originally they did have the backing of many, many Catholic kings and popes, etc., etc. He says suppression is the most difficult part of the history of the society, having enjoyed very high favour among Catholic peoples, kings, prelates and popes. For 2.5 centuries, it suddenly becomes an object of frenzied hostility. It's overwhelmed with obloquy and overthrown with dramatic rapidity. Every work of the Jesuit, their vast missions, their noble colleges, their churches, all is taken from them or destroyed. They are banished and their order suppressed with harsh and denunciatory words even from the Pope. What makes the contrast more striking is that the protector for the moment, are former enemies. Yeah, so their protectors for the former enemies are Russians and Frederick of Prussia. Alright? So, these Jesuits were a very powerful force, an exceptionally powerful force, but they were teaching a really watered down version of Christianity to the point you're almost freedom. It says, so basically, just read that again. What makes the contrast more striking is that their protectors, for the moment, are their former enemies, the Russians and Frederick of Prussia. Well, it wasn't the Russians in the sense that Catherine the Great took over Russia. Yeah, killed Peter III, the last Romanov, and took over Russia on behalf of the Anhalt black nobility bloodline. But also you've got to take him to note, Frederick of Prussia, because Prussia is the Teutonic Knights, which is the Templars. So that represents itself here. The Freemasons with the Jesuits, with the Knights of St. Columba, all these orders coming under now, back in the 1700s, under Catherine the Great and Frederick of Prussia, both representatives of this secret society military army. Like many intricate problems, its solution is best found by beginning with what is easy to understand. We look forward a generation, and we see that every one of the thrones, the popes not excluded, which have been active in the suppression, is overwhelmed. So everything that opposed the Jesuits, okay, when they were kicked out of the Vatican, then they headed into the hands of the Russians and the Prussians, and in Corsica as well, you know, the home of Napoleon, that's where he was born, he was a Corsican, became overwhelmed. So all these nations that attacked the Jesuits became overwhelmed with revolution. So that's France, Spain, Portugal and Italy. Become and indeed still are a prey to the extravagance of the revolutionary movement. The suppression of the society was due to the same causes which in further development brought about the French Revolution. So there's an intricate tie between the Jesuits that came back under the Prussians and the Russians, or not necessarily the Russians, but Catherine the Great, the Anhalts, the black nobility, were tied into the French Revolution, which was also then tied into the American Revolution. Was it not? Yeah? Abraham Lincoln made it clear in one of his letters that if it wasn't for the power, the sinister, I think he used the term sinister power. Sinister was the word he used. I think he said power, or I'm not sure. I think he said something like, if it wasn't for the sinister power of the Jesuits, the Civil War would not have been able to take root. These causes varied somewhat in different countries. In France, many influences combined, as we shall see, from Jansenism to free thought, to then prevalent impatience with the old order of things. Some have thought that the suppression was primarily due to these currents of thought. Others attribute it chiefly to the absolutism of the Bourbons. For though in France the king was averse to the suppression, the destructive forces acquired their power because he was too indolent to exercise control, which at that time he alone possessed outside France. It is plain that autocracy, acting through high-handed ministers, was the determining cause. So it looks more like people were actually after what the Jesuits represented, the missions across the world. So whereas the Chinese believe they're working with the original Jesuits that originally went over there instead of the Protestants, it's actually not. It's the secret society military might, the East Indians included, of the Templar orders, Teutonic Knights, etc., from which we get Bolshevism, from which we get Nazism, through the power of those that they used to call the name stealers, we today call the Khazars. Interesting. So that's an interesting document. If you're interested in just having a look at why they were kicked out, and that's coming from the New Advent, which is actually the Catholic Encyclopedia. So you'll then see from their perspective, because there's a distinction between Catholicism and Jesuitism. And we today, my generation, baby boomers, we only know Rome from the perspective of Vatican II. We know no different. We know no different. But if from 1850 this Jesuit system were being pushed, then even our ancestors back maybe 5 generations were getting this stuff shoved down their neck, and not, as we're taught to believe, original Catholicism. This is interesting as well. It's a continuation of the Prussiagate stuff, but he's talking about Urania here, and that's what it is they're trying to create. Part 1 introduces the origin of the ideology behind the transgender movement. Prior to the declaration of the third sex, gays were always seen as men and women. When Karl Ulrichs presented his third sex theory, he postulated that the gender of gay men and women were not binary, but transitory, a combination of man and woman. He named these people Uranians. Part 2 presented how the theory of the third sex was popularised by one of the world's finest sexologists, Dr. Magnus Hirschfeld. He firmly believed that his patients were Uranian, and in some cases they underwent gender reassignment surgery. He performed the world's first known sex change operation. Throughout his career, Hirschfeld completely ignored the possibility that most of his gender-challenged patients were suffering from severe mental illness and trauma. Part 3 offered a different look at the origins and evolution of the Nazis. Many of the highest-ranking Nazis were sadomasochistic homosexuals who believed it was their right to satisfy their desires with children. For many years, they were attached to the German gay rights movement, but violently split from them when they realised the movement would not support sex with children under the age of 16. In 1917, these men reorganised themselves into the Thule Society, which later launched the Nazi Party. Their vision of an Aryan society consisted of a master race of gay men who would rule over the rest of the world and exterminate all the inferior races. Now, Kay Griggs' poll shows you that that's exactly what's happened in the militaries. Cherry Marines. What is worth noting about the first 3 parts of the series is that the major players are almost exclusively Prussians. Ulrich, Hirschfeld and the Thule Society, along with the Nazis, were all deeply influenced by the culture of Prussia, whether it was their theories, their militancy or their homosexuality. Everything originated from the state of Prussia. When the Nazis took control over Germany in 1934, they wasted no time in destroying all evidence of their criminal past. Their first raid was Hirschfeld's Sex Institute, which held records of the gay victims of their sadomasochistic escapades during the 1920s and early 1930s. Many of these victims had approached Dr. Hirschfeld to help seek the first line of business for the Nazis was to confiscate all of Hirschfeld's documents, revealing what they feared the most. From here, the Nazis rounded up all the gays who were potentially witnesses to their child sex crimes. These men were the first interns at the concentration camps. Finally, the Nazis recruited thousands of medical researchers to the camps, where the prisoners were subjected to torture, dissection, and chemical experiments. In this article, we will look at the hell and the prisoners endured during World War II. We will then look at the face of the Nazi medical researchers after World War II, and finally address the question, where are they now? So this is a very interesting look. I wrote a lot about this on one of my first sites that we took down a few years ago. It was the occult side of the rise of Hitler, the people behind him, such as Lanz von Liebenfels and Guido von List, among other Eckhart. I forgot his first name. I think it was Eckhart. I think that made the claim, follow Hitler, he will dance, but it is I who call the tune. So that in occult circles is pretty much saying that this guy, I think it was Eckhart, plugged in Hitler to this lower realm stuff that I know exists, because that's exactly what they were trying to do with me way back in the day. So this is an interesting bit of data as well. explaining again, working in sync with this this system pulled through the Templars. Basically, that's where we first get into grips with this idea that these societies that came out of the Crusades were actually full-blown homosexuals. Which, of course, I've said many times, I don't have a problem with homosexuality. People's business is their business. It's got nothing to do with me. But when you start spreading it into areas that don't really need to know about it, especially your children, you've crossed more than one line. And this is an interesting bit of data as well. I didn't actually read it all, but I'm pretty sure some of this has come off my websites. Just going through here, he says, I felt interesting. He suggests that the Guelphs and the Ghibellines are operating together, which would, in my opinion, make sense. So rather than the Hohenstaffens and the Welfs doing battle, they actually came together. Maybe after the battle, I don't know. But he puts that in there, which is interesting. The Cecil family were controlled by the powerful Jesuit family known as the Pallavicini. I've mentioned the Pallavicini many times to you. Maria Camilla Pallavicini is far more powerful than Queen Elizabeth II. So Maria Camilla Pallavicini, I would suggest, is above the Rothschilds. So when you look at that picture that I've put up often of Evelyn and said it doesn't matter that he's dead, it's a network, ultimately he would have been answerable to Maria Camilla Pallavicini, and I would suggest the same is the case with King Charles III. Queen and Prince Philip are totally subordinate to the papal bloodline, the Breakspear family and their Jesuit UK HQ at 114 Mount Street. Okay, so that's suggesting in this take that the Breakspears still actually have power here. Quite possible. Maybe the Stanleys were actually a front for the Breakspears. Who knows? Remember, the Stanleys are important. They put the Tudors on the throne. Now, what you believe or understand about the Tudors is entirely up to you, but just know that it was the Stanleys and the Pallavicini that put the Tudors on the throne. And it was also the Pallavicini that funded Elizabeth I to build the navy, to basically pirate all the galleons that were piling over from South America as the Spanish were robbing the bejesus out of South American nations. The most powerful man right now in the conspiracy over this world is a Roman by the name of, well, no, I don't buy that. Okay. Orsini are known as the Maximus family that I do accept, but I don't know. I wouldn't. I'd be very surprised if that ever came out if they were, but you never know. Now, this is going on about the Grey Pope. I've never been too sure that is actually correct. There's the Black Pope, yeah, maybe, but there's also the White Pope. But this Grey Pope idea, I weren't so sure. I couldn't find any data to support it, let's put it that way. And of course, you've got the Rothschild marrying Princess Olympia, Aldo Brandini. I've done a page on that, which I'll put up on this video as well for those who may not have seen it. So there you go. Some interesting stuff. House of Este, they're very powerful. Borgia, Somaglia, Conti, Chigi, Colonna, Fornes, Medici, Gattani, Pamphili, Este, Aldo Brandini. These Egyptian Ptolemaic dynastic rulers are in full control of the Company of Jesus and the High Grey Council of Ten and the Black Pope, he says. Here is an excellent data on the Black Pope. The Black Pope Spurgeon, Jesuit General, is the President of the world, speaks at Loyola Military Force University in his unratified 14th Amendment Little Rome DC United States Corporation. Now, this gets a bit interesting again. Cooperation under International Maritime Admiralty Law, Uniform Commercial Code is based upon Vatican canon law and perfected by the Roman Empire. He lies about his powers over the Pope as of 1814. He only serves and works with the shadow Jesuits, being the papal bloodlines Orsini's, Breakspears, Aldo Brandini's, Fornes and Somaglia's. Adolfo is not of papal bloodline. Some black popes have been. The next in power beneath the Jesuits is the Bourbon King Juan Carlos of Spain. Now, you've heard me talk about him before. Greg Hallett suggests that Sire William. But it's important that we understand that the real serious title is the King of Jerusalem. The Roman monarch of the world. So this is, guys, said to be the Roman monarch of the world is the King of Jerusalem. And SM, or Sovereign Military Order of Malta. So he classes the military navigator. There he is. He abdicated and put his son in. This is the true world's power system right now. Adolfo serves as military general protecting Zoroastrianism and Mithraism mystery schools. That's correct. That's definitely in it. I studied both. The Jesuits were celebrated by the papal bloodline Foreigners during the reign of Foreigners Paul III. So Foreigners, guys, the Foreigners are a very exceptionally powerful family, which is why I'm not so sure that the Orsinians are above. They wherever you go with this, they're an old family. But again, I always work on this idea that if you can see it, it's not the top. So there we go. Loyola was commissioned, so he formed the Jesuits, by Alessandro Cardinal Foreigners. So there you can see. Now look how dark skinned these are, because they've lightened them up. But these guys are very dark skinned. Borgia. Yeah. So who are they? Don Francis Borgia was the great. These were filthy people. He were a hat pervert. I think it was this one. It was one at Borgia's anyway. And you just look at their crests. It's interesting. Don Francis Borgia was the great-grandson of Pope Alexander VI and co-founder of the Jesuits. On his mother's side, he was descended from King Ferdinand of Aragon, the Spanish control of the Vatican through the Jesuits. For the past 500... Well, this is where you get your Islamic side of it as well, you see. So your Moorish side. Yeah? For the past 500 years, the Spanish Inquisition has controlled the Vatican by means of the Jesuits. So we don't know, is it the old school Moorish side that were good, that had it right, and it's been took over by this side? All the Jesuits answered their general in Rome, and he in turn is content to run the show from behind the scenes without any publicity or public acclaim, so as not to arouse the age-old Italian hostility to the Spanish. So that's another document that I'll put up there for you to have a little look at. Now I think that's it on this gig. I think that's all I wanted to put up. If you want to look how they infiltrated Islam, sabotaged Zevi, the Sabbatean Frankish chronology from 1492 to Israel, and in Catholicism the same was carried out through Guy Jacob Frank, who reckoned to be sabotaged Zevi. Hang on, you're not even looking at them, are you? Here you are. Sabotaged Zevi reincarnated. So just to end. That's important in the sense that if what we're finding is correct, and that the Vatican's first claim on the concept created in a trust held by them on the mother's maiden name. So the whore would then be collecting all your offspring but still be a virgin. Now that's not to say we're talking about the Queen of Heaven. We're talking about this mimic that they clearly do all the time, creating their own version of everything. But in this Jesuit system that they're pushing everywhere, they are now pushing and saying that Mary, Mother of God, is God, and that the Lord is Satan. So what they're playing with that, I don't know. What they're moving in there, but that would definitely pull you into the whore, would it not? If that's what it's going, the whore of Babylon. We're not talking about the original, because obviously they mimic. They're taking the piss and mimicking, and in their eyes that's the test for you, mankind. Are you shit like they reckon, or are you as good as the Elohim bragged about in Genesis 1 when they were quite happy with the creation? So it's important that we understand what is going on with these estates, because the only way you're going to stop this is by stopping your estate moving into the Noahide. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'll come and have a look at what you're doing, and then I think we'll cut this one short because there's no more data to be had on this particular topic. just a racket like the RSPCC. Yep, but they're a paedophile ring. Lex Smart, Sean, you're cool by the sun. Yes, indeed I am. Paul 7 says occupation unknown. EM, real, Holy See. Yep, done that. House of CC. The gig's on. EM, real, the Red Dragon. Treen says, that's what I'm thinking about phonetics rather than the spelling of words. Treen, like the prophet. Exactly. So everything they do mimics the original. So a mimic of a spiritual, feminine system, etc., overlooking kind of thing. They've created this mimic thing. Pittman Shorthand uses the phonetics and the writing is similar to Hebrew, Arabic. Yeah, I mean, if you want to know what everything's translated different from, go to the Hebrew Bible, because there's where you've got it. They've put the new translations in and said the Elohim means God and it's singular, even though it means plural. And they come up with this sophistry. They're so bollocks. Honestly, if you read it through, you're really not seeing the garbage in it, because it's so blatantly bollocks. EM Real says, like sign language is the language of the dragon. Do you know, I looked into this stuff. There's something dark about it, and I can't remember. I think I probably put it on Facebook and it just gets lost. They take everything off. Is that Jeremy Vicious? Pursuing all newspapers during the Civil War, talk of the day in northern states were cussing the power of the Pilgrims. Yeah. And of course the South were terrified, weren't they? Because there was a massive rebellion of the slaves in Haiti. And that scared the living bejesus out of them. Anyway. Jeremy Fish says, salute and cheers. Like scales of a serpent. The basilisk. Well, I mean, when you get into all the occult stuff, the serpent doesn't mean what religion said it means. It really doesn't. That's not the original meanings of the use of the serpent. The dragon isn't the serpent, if I remember rightly. And Mark says, hi guys, joined at 84 minutes. Hope you're all good. We're all good, Mark. You're alright, matey. And Jeremy Fisher says, much appreciated. Well, chaps, what about Reiki? My sister is a master. Well, I wouldn't let anybody put their hands on me for Reiki, because you don't know what spirits they're channeling through. Doesn't mean there's no good ones out there. And I'd rather heal myself than put my hands into something. Again, I don't know. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I will say have a good week. Hope the sun keeps up and you get tan. Get that vitamin D up. And I've only got one more thing to say, and that would be, till the next time.